Morning, YouTube. I'm gonna try to get through this with a structured dialogue. You know me, when I get off on these type of talks, I'm pretty much all over the place. But why I'm talking today, this morning, is due to the fact that I was told that I'm hard on white people, and I don't. Well, as the opinion goes, I'm not very critical of black people, which is kind of funny because I just did a video prior to this one talking about why black people are divided and the problems and the issues that concern and surround that. But anyway, I don't stray away from addressing certain things that are brought to my attention. Okay. Well, as people are well aware, if they go back and look at my videos, I've stated before that I myself am a person who's mixed, biracial, half black, half white. I'm in an interracial relationship. I have kids that are mixed, you know. Um, and it's not to say, because the narrative, especially coming from black people, because this is something that has always been said when it comes to like uh, calling white people out when they say, "Well, I have black friends. That doesn't make me a racist," or I work with black people every day, or I listen to rap music, or this, that, and the other. So how can I be racist or have some kind of objective point of view towards black people in a negative way? And I don't entertain stereotypes. I hear you, because that would probably be my same line of defense by what I just said prior to expressing what I just said. I try to find balance in these discussions when speaking on race related issues. Okay. Um, and sometimes when having these discussions, it's hard to separate racial propaganda and not be dismissive of actual issues that revolve around race. Okay. And like I stated before, my girlfriend said, "Why are you so infatuated with racial things? Why can't you just, just not be focused on that? There's other things in the world to be concerned with." And she is correct. There are other things in the world to be concerned with. But sometimes it seems, without question, that at the core of it all, it stems from the issue concerning race. 9 times out of 10. Whether it's the things you see with the Karens, law enforcement, corporate America, um, where we are at in society as far as like the neighborhoods that we live in, our lack of access to certain things to help us get on our feet, and how it seems like one group isn't affected the same as another group. And in a way, it's kind of hard because you do have people who look at things from their perspective, rightfully so, especially white people, when it's discussed about white privilege. Certain things that they are blindly aware of that they don't see because they are not affected in the same way that people who are of the black community are affected. Um, a lot of people say, "Well, we're poor too," and I get that. I do. Part of the reason why, when I spoke of how segregation was successful. It didn't mean that white people who benefited from segregation was rich. No, it just they had a sense of entitlement. They could sit in restaurants. They could sit in the front of the bus. They could drink out of certain water fountains, go to bathrooms and stuff, whereas black people couldn't. That was a privilege that was awarded to them that wasn't awarded to us. You know? Um, but when segregation was abolished, it was thought that the playing field was made equal. But what people don't understand and realize is that when a course of action is put into place, there's something else that transpires where they what's the word that I'm looking for? They adjust. Prime example, and people talk about this all the time. Depending on the demographics of this country, when people talk about law enforcement and those individuals within the department are racist. And then you have people with counter arguments saying, well, the police department is diverse. You have blacks, Asians, Hispanics, and whites and stuff that are on law enforcement. Yeah, well, it depends on where you're at. If you talk about Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or whatever, it's going to be diverse. But what about these other areas, like in Oregon or in Boston or wherever, where the police force is predominantly white, where they have a history of racial practices that go against people of color, you know? And when I talk about things being adjusted, look at the system that was created. Going back to segregation. You want to talk about the injustice system, the courts, you know, black people were fighting against a mechanism created based on racism. And today we see the transparency of that, because it's been exploited, it's been exposed. Now, there was no other option but to address it. Because before, people were like just sweeping it up under the rug, business as usual, don't talk about it, it's just a fabric of your imagination, But take law enforcement. People say, hey, the KKK didn't go anywhere. White supremacists didn't go anywhere. It's still relevant and present. It just took on another form. And the form that it took on, from burning crosses and walking around in robes and hoods and stuff, is that now you got a badge. Now you got police uniform. Now we can lawfully and legally execute your ass. And there's nothing that you can do to get away with it, because we have things put in place to protect us for carrying out certain executions that people may criticize and argue as being inhumane. Okay? Now, that right there is as far as my criticism goes when it comes to me addressing problems or issues concerning white people. Okay? Now, on the flip side, white people get offended. They're like, not all of us are racist. We don't believe in those practices. We don't believe in entertaining certain stereotypes. I wasn't raised that way. And I hear you. Because in America, we have this indoctrinated way of looking at things, because we see the bad element, take that and judge the group in its entirety, and take away the fairness of giving the individual a chance to prove themselves otherwise. And the same goes in the black community. Now, let me flip this. That same argument that I say I hear white people and their cries and their disgust and how they're being looked at. How do you think black people feel when they are stereotyped? Okay? When you see the crime element in certain areas and stuff, and it's like how a black person's trying to decipher which is a good white person versus which is a bad white person. I don't, and it's crazy because this is the same argument black people has been trying to tell or present to white people. Yep. Morning trash. I'm gonna give it a moment. But I'm sure it's probably going to drown out my audio while I'm trying to convey this point. Yep. Right on time. But the same concerns that black people have when it comes to them being profiled or stereotyped or prejudged based on how they are dressed or how they look. And the perception is that depending on your appearance, you could be mistaken for a drug dealer or a thug or a hoodlum or whatever kind of terms that they like to throw out there to define us, so to speak. And then when we get offended, we are told not to. But when you project that type of stereotype or that outlook on the people, it affects them. Not only by your opinions, but by how you interact with them. By following them around the stores or calling the police on them, when they're just going about their daily life and their daily routine, not doing a damn thing. And 9 times out of 10, especially if you entertain going down a rabbit hole of these YouTube videos, and one channel that is accurate, actually 2, but 2 channels, Sahito and African Diaspora. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But they point out the things that we want to be dismissive of when it comes to how white America affects black America. And we never can sit down and have a straight up discussion because we entertain deflecting, making excuses, or ignoring, or being dismissive of having to address these concerns. But I tell people, be unapologetic. I tell white people, I understand you don't feel that you should be branded by the acts of other people or what has taken place in history. I get that because we're in a different time, but because we are in a different time, have anything really changed that much, or has it just transferred in the disguise of something else? And when looking at things, when taking a step back, you have to say, okay, have we gotten to a point where we've just gotten comfortable, where things may still continue to go on, but we don't address it because we are comfortable? So, we are complacent and we are willing to ignore things that others are not willing to ignore. And God forbid if they bring it up, we gotta silence them because we don't want to entertain certain narratives, because bringing awareness to a particular issue is a no. No, that disrupts the status quo. But ironically, when people practice that type of attitude, they allow people to get away with certain things that they wouldn't allow other people to get away with. And pretty much the other people is in reference to us. We are put under a microscope. Every move we make, anything we discuss, anything we do is criticized, judged. But you do that to somebody else, it's reverse racism. The irony. I'm very unapologetic when I see things. But I also have an understanding as to how far I can go with certain things as well. Because I start, if I lean so far on one side of an argument, I start contradicting my own beliefs. You know, because I always talk about don't generalize people. You gotta look at the individual. But sometimes, when having the discussions, you start entertaining that type of talk with the generalizations, and I find myself guilty of it. I'm not gonna lie, and then I have to catch myself and like, okay, because then when I go to bring in another point to counteract the point that was already presented, it's like, damn, there go the hypocrisy of what I was trying to say. But for those who can see past like the critique of how people articulate certain things and have a basic understanding of what is being said, they get it. They get it. But I think the problem is we try to apply the focus on where the focus need to be applied. And like I said, you know, to break it down in basic layman terms, I understand when it comes to the argument of race, not every white person is a neo-Nazi or white supremacist or part of the KKK. Maybe some of where they grew up in and some of the demographics where there aren't many black people and they only go off of what's presented to them in the news or by hearsay or whatever, that they form their perception of black people by that. Vice versa, same with black people. They're taught that, hey, don't trust white people. They're gonna stab you in the back. They don't like black people. They will do anything to trip you up in life. They are not your friend. They are the devil. I heard that. Um, but I say all that to say this. There's been a history. There's been successful relationships between both black and white. You can't be dismissive of that. But as we done come to a crossroads with this election, whatever, and we stand divided as a nation because of our political beliefs. And some of it, you see how people are acting out towards one another, and you see it amongst like blacks and whites and stuff like that. Um, how can we unify as a country if we're always entertaining things that divide us? And many of people have pointed this out, I included, that when you have other countries that are looking at America on a flat screen and they're seeing all the things that are taking place, and we are the first ones always want to point out other people's negativities and flaws and stuff like that to say, hey, we are better than you. Look at what we got. Well, as it stands right now, in comparison to other people who we've criticized in the past, we are flunking as a nation, as a people who claim to be so patriotic, which is a joke, truth be told. While they're getting their shit together and they're coming together in their own nations and stuff like that, we are separating. And what happens when people separate? Other influences come in and start taking over. We have to get past our own bullshit in order to be strengthened and successful. Well, that's all I got for this morning. Like I said, I don't have no structured way of conveying my thoughts, but I share them anyhow. And like I said, this is my form of therapy. But anyway, until next time, until next video,